crimes.
Yeah, but for there to be findings that indicate that war crimes have been committed, war crimes have to be committed in the first place. So are you saying, so okay, if there's an allegation that you have picked someone's pocket, I have to prove it?
Undoubtedly, prove it beyond reasonable doubt,
Yes.
this kind of charge. But the fact of the matter is, Sri Lanka should never concede to the principle that an international body can come in and enter into our jurisdiction and inquire into those affairs. We are a sovereign country. We have we are a free nation that has won a war against terrorism. We should have a mechanism domestically. I mean, there are charges. Let's face it.
Right.
There are charges. If there are charges, what better way is it than having those charges examined? So I think we must have a domestic mechanism here, credible, reasonable mechanism, where there can be findings. If there are any charges, let them come. Now, nobody has come so far and made charges. There's the LLRC. So there are certain charges about people disappearing.
Let before we miss this point.
Yes.
Now, in this report, at least a summary that we have seen, or the comments on the summary, there are a couple of things which seem strange to me. One is the numbers that they throw out. Some say it's 7,000 plus, according to UN reports. Now, who has been doing the counting here? That is one. And then they say it's probably higher, several times higher, and so all of a sudden it's now 40,000. Now, at the same time, in this report or the summary, it is mentioned that these cannot be confirmed, and that if these allegations are proven, then there is a case for war crimes for a war crimes case to be brought up before the relevant body. So, is it just conjecture, these numbers that they're coming up with?
I mean, when you say 7,500 in one paragraph and 40,000 in another, you are in the area of speculation and conjecture.
Right.
I mean, it's like fairy tales that you are discussing. I mean, that is the real problem with this report. It loses its own credibility. I mean, they have gone and attacked the LLRC
Yes.
before it has even given its report. On what basis do they do that? I mean, it's all based, if you look on hearsay evidence. What is the value of that kind of evidence? So let us, in Sri Lanka, let us show our bona fides. Let us have a mechanism here. And if there are people who are prepared to come and give evidence, for that matter, I don't mind, we can have the most transparent system like video conferencing, witness protection, let's all that be there. Because we have faced, I mean, there was a Human Rights Commission here, which did inquire. There were charges brought. We defended, we successfully defended. The reports are available.
This is about the 17 aid workers.
17 workers. I participated in that case and I defended them over a period of 13 months, and they found who the real killers were. But now, why don't we have? And remember, that was a body that till the very end, there was a German judge watching the proceedings, there was a Japanese representative, and they did not express any dissatisfaction. Remember, that was a time when the French were holding the chairmanship of the EU. They were satisfied.
Right.
So, I mean, we in Sri Lanka are in a strong position. If you ask me what are war crimes, I can tell you clearly, Malinda. Now we are getting
So what are war crimes? No, the important thing about getting these terms out is because they are used uncritically by people who have no idea about the legal legal meanings of the terms that are used, and what kinds of repercussions, what kind of implications they may have. So what exactly are war crimes, and what is the legal terms and other things that are relevant to war crimes in terms of this issue?
The question is very, if I may put it in a nutshell form, is the war a just war or not?
Right.
Now, in that there are a number of principles of law which are not normally adopted in other kind of criminal situations. That is, basically, it is the most important thing is the law of proportionality. That means that you never in a war can you have a zero casualty rate. There are some casualties, but proportionately, is it reasonable within the firepower you had that was necessary to destroy the enemy, or did you particularly target civilians? I mean, were there excesses? Those are the questions that will come into operation.
Will there also be, were there any other options also? in this?
Yes. Now, for example, in this particular case, we Sri Lanka has a very strong case because we created 2 no-fire zones.
Right.
Now, into no-fire zones, there was no business for one camp, the LTT, to get in there for their own protection and seek the civilians as a human shield, so that our case becomes much stronger. Remember, this is an organization that is not a liberation party or a nationalistic party that was fighting a war. It was a terrorist group so named by the international community, known to be child snatchers.
Right.
So that we very successfully, now in just as much as the rule of proportionality comes in, another rule is how swiftly can you finish the war. I mean, this is a war that was finished in very, very fast timing.
Right.
I mean, which shows that this was the principle is, did you undertake the war believing that you can achieve success?
Right.
Now, if you
because
did,
we have taken into consideration the fact that it had been fought over 30 years and nothing had happened, nothing tangible, no peace, no no return to normalcy, and so on. Now, before we need to elaborate on the issue of the law of
Yes.
proportionality.
Yes.
But before that, let's take a break. Stay with us. We'll be back to talk more about the recent report that is to be released soon on the panel appointed by Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations, to inquire about the last days of the war against terrorism in Sri Lanka. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Outlook edition of the Roundtable. We are talking about the recent the panel appointed by Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, to inquire about Sri Lanka, into alleged war crimes and so on in the last days of the conflict against terrorism. We have with us Mr. Gomin Dayasri, Senior Attorney at Law, and we were just talking about the issue of the law of proportionality. Now, when you talk about proportionality, is something that stirred in my mind is the double standards that it seems pretty obvious here. Now, this is a report which not only mimics lot of reports and allegations made by very strongly pro-LTT groups and those who were against the military offensive against the LTT and the humanitarian mission. What is missing here is that this is an allegation, whereas there are horrendous crimes against humanity, genocide that have been perpetrated, not conjecture, not allegation, but established fact. People dying in their hundreds of thousands in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Gaza, and other parts of the world. Where is the justice? Where is the principle of equality in these things? What do you think, Mr. Dayasri?
if I may take just one illustration, now that you spoke on that subject, you probably would have heard that the drones that were being used by the Americans, not in Afghanistan but in Pakistan, killing civilians.
Yes.
Now, these drones, which are on secret missions, have been targeting supposedly to be enemy Taliban forces, but they have hit the civilians and many have died. It's established, it is admitted, but the difference is we also use drones. There were drones flying over the no-fire zone, but what did those drones do? There's not a single allegation that any drone was used for the purpose of bombarding the people. Those drones, what they did was, they sent the pictures with television cameras to our field commanders. So the field commanders had the picture from above, where they knew where the terrorists were, they knew where the civilians were. So that with the drone itself, I'm taking this as a token, as a symbol, was used as a humanitarian measure. to know exactly where the enemy lay, so that therefore we minimize casualties. Now the important thing is, again, this was a war that is restricted 2 years, because for all those period we were exhausted to the ultimate, the peace process.
Right.
There were so many talks. I mean, the last time 2 talks that they had, I was a participant, I can say. We went to Norway. We went to Norway.
So,
They did not come. Next time we went, they came.
but they didn't participate.
The first time they came to that place where they were, and they were playing cricket.
Right.
They didn't join us.
Okay.
But second time they came to the floor and then left, because we were not prepared to talk about A9. So I mean, the peace process was exhausted. But these peaceniks, I mean, remember, there were businessmen at that time who were holding hands on the streets of Colombo saying we want peace. But do I hear those businessmen now talking of anything? I mean, remember, if we have this kind of allegations, the first affected sector in these countries are going to be the business sector, the economy, because there will be sanctions. I think this is the time that those voices that were so loud and clear, clamoring for peace. I mean, I am talking of our business community, our elite society in Colombo, the sophisticated elite society. They would be suffering most because there will be sanctions on us. I think this is the time, Malinda, where the entire nation, forget about political differences, this is foreign intervention in another new style, and we must all rise against this. Now look at it, the TNA has issued a statement in support of the Ban Ki-moon report.
Right. Which is natural, the TNA was always a creature of the LTT. And that project and the political project, so that does not surprise you.
It's a disgrace. Frankly, I have greater respect for Prabhakaran than for the TNA, because now they say, as you said, they are a creation of the LTT. They supported the LTT, they spoke for the LTT, they went abroad and propagated ideas on behalf of the LTT. But now they say they are critical of the LTT. Crimes after LTT has been demolished. I frankly prefer a man like Prabhakaran who takes one stand than the TNA, which wants to stand, now that the LTT is demolished, want to destroy the LTT. I mean, if they stood for the LTT now, they must take the same stand. But instead they are trying to play ball with everybody. But my position is, would they have been able to do politics in the open? Though they supported LTT would have never given any of those politicians the right to participate in exercising their franchise, right, to elect. They were not allowed to have elections. Now they can talk. But I have no objection to the TNA saying we must have the war crimes investigated. But when you support the report of Ban Ki-moon, what are you doing? They want to have all these inquiries in a foreign country, critical of what is happening in this country as far as justice is concerned. There are undoubtedly deficiencies in our systems, but we must not safeguard our sovereignty, our rights. And this is where I think the people must all join, because we've exhausted the peace sources. We finished the war within a very limited period of 2 to 2 years. Now that's a very short war.